Hello and welcome, this is Sai, and today I'm going to show you some mob sorters. This is my best one so far, I think, as far as accuracy is concerned. However, I'm not going to show this one straight away. I'm going to show you a few more designs and we can get around the basics of it before I show this one in action. So I'll explain it first. So, this isn't a mob sorter. It is, however, essential to the running of my mob sorters. Well, it's the most basic method that I know of mob regulation. So, we'll just run it, and it'll be fairly obvious as to what it does. Just put a bunch of mobs in here, and as you can see, it's a method for pushing one mob at a time into a different area. Obviously, you can extend this delay by adding, as you'd extend any signal. This is just working for the length of signal from a pressure plate. We have two pistons. One piston stops any more mobs coming in and pushes any more mobs that were halfway down to the pressure plate back up into the top stream, and the other piston pushes the mob that activated the pressure plate off it a tick later. The tick is to reduce the number of suffocations you get. Don't make it glass pushing off in case of suffocations. That is a bad idea. If you're going to be suffocating a mob, suffocating it is better than having it stand on the pressure plate forever. The second water stream at the moment is here purely for the purposes of demonstration. Normally you'd drop it off onto a different system. Anyway, on to the first mob sorter now. Okay, this is probably the most basic effective mob sorter of any kind in existence. It's not a whole lot of practical use, but it's worth it as a demonstration. So we have an area in the middle with a ocelot and a villager. The ocelot, we have viewing room here, and this is apparently also enough for a zombie to see a villager. That half of their legs, which is rather odd, really, to be honest. You need to give the creeper a large amount of pathfinding space so that it can run away from ocelots, but basically we can spam creepers in here as fast as I can spam them with them not really moving, and they tend to go to the outside. The only time they'll go to the inside is if you manage to stick down a heck of a lot of them and push them over. And also, zombies will go to the inside. Sorry, that's probably quite noisy. But yeah, as you can see, we can spam a lot of zombies and they always go to the inside. What's the problem with this? Apart from the noise, skeletons, and the fact that if we spam zombies and creepers together in one of these corners, they push each other into the wrong destinations every so often. The first problem is quite difficult to solve within the context of simplicity, but the second problem is simple. We use what we just looked at, the regulator, and we put everything into a box, essentially. So, this is a... Oh, if you didn't know, mobs can pathfind over open trapdoors as if they were solid blocks. Anyway, this is a box. It's essentially a small version of what we've got over there, and we have pathfinding space for the creepers. Plenty of it that they pathfind fairly quickly away from an ocelot. Or you put an ocelot in here and a villager here. Generally, it's sensible to put a cat in instead of an ocelot, purely because ocelots despawn, and it'd be really, really, really hard in survival to chase one into an area like that. You can put a cat in there with a little bit of difficulty, but relative ease. So now, if we just chuck a bunch of... Actually, you know what? Turning sound down. Options. Sound. Okay. We can spam a bunch of zombies and creepers in there, and more zombies, and let's mix it up a little bit. And the regulator means that pretty much only ones going through at a time. We have put a bit too many in there at the moment, unfortunately, and we've managed to... I'm not sure where he came from. Probably bounced out with the open roof over here to display stuff. Yeah, that's far too many in at the moment. But it is working. And this works pretty much 100% of the time, apart from when you strangle the mobs or suffocate them. I have never seen this one fail in about, including those I've put through. There must have been about 500 mobs I've put through this, and this is perfect, pretty much. You always get zombies in that side, creepers in that side, and no contamination at all. As you can see, some have jumped out because I've opened the roof here. I'm not exactly sure why I've done that, but generally you don't want the roof open. Moving on from the creeper and zombie sorter, the next iteration of my mob sorting system is here. And this is the one we saw at the start, aside from a relatively minor middle step that didn't really introduce anything new apart from skeletons and did it fairly badly. Anyway, so what we have here is essentially the same thing as we had with the creeper and zombie setup, only we don't have the floor in the centre. We still have our villager and ocelot over there, and the zombies can pathfind nicely in that direction. The creepers can pathfind very nicely in that direction. We have lots of open space, but no floor. And the floor is attached to a piston, as you saw, and this piston activates at pretty much roughly the same time as the regulator fires above it. You also note we have two regulators here, and the reason for this is instead of using lots and lots of, well, when we put lots and lots and lots of mobs through, we really want them to not be pushing each other two at a time into the regulator, especially when we're including skeletons in the mix. So we put a second one on, and I've linked it up to the first one in case you suffocate a mob in this regulator. You can't let any more through here, so you don't have a huge pile up here which causes exactly the same problem. Now, the problem with sorting skeletons by seeing what doesn't move is that sometimes the skeletons will pathfind away from here, and that is a bad thing. We shouldn't have a door there. I hope I haven't got this. No, that must have been destroyed at some point. Sometimes the skeletons will move, and this means that sometimes you get skeletons in a zombie output or a creeper output. Now, you can see I've got pretty much 4 of exactly the same thing here. And the reason for that is we put everything in this input trough. I then have a clock here, which means that half of the time nothing can exit this. This is just a safety precaution, really. You can turn that off whenever you like. However, we'll just put some mobs in here and show you it working, because that is the best way to demonstrate anything, is to show it working. This has a fairly a very high success rate. I have seen Captain Walnut's video. I was directed to it by Reddit, and it's very good, and it's almost completely different from mine, apart from villagers, the way it does it. Right, so here we see a skeleton that ignored us, and that's a skeleton that went the correct way. We had a bit of lag there, so a creeper fell down the centre, which is not supposed to happen. But problems do happen when you extend like this, and it's for this reason that we have 4. So you can see this going fairly well. We're getting pretty bad frames at the moment, unfortunately, sorry. But most of the mobs are going to their intended destination. Now, if you saw that skeleton caught on fire, that's a precaution the system has. If we look down, all of the area over here and all of this area is in sunlight during the day. So the only place that skeletons can pathfind to where they won't set on fire is right here, which is where they drop down. This merely makes it more effective in the day and hurts zombies sometimes a little bit. It's a fair trade, I believe. Anyway, we now see some mobs coming through these pipes here. Everything's gone in. In case things get clogged up in these pressure relief, you can just push there. But some mobs are coming through, and zombies, and whatever accidentally got into zombie tubes, that shouldn't normally happen, get directed to the first mob sorter. This mob sorter checks if there is a zombie again. If they are a zombie for the second time, it drops them into the zombie output. If they turn out to be a creeper or a skeleton in the estimation of this, it sends them back into this tube. Both of the other sorters work in the same way. They'll check for the same mob twice, and if it's not the same, they'll send it back into this tube. This goes all the way up here and straight back into the input. So as you can see, a skeleton turned up 2 different results on its tests, and thus it's being sent into this water stream, which will eventually drop it down there. It's moving up now, as you can see. There we go. Skeleton's been recycled. Now, you did before see a skeleton come down here if you were eagle-eyed, and that appears to be the 1 in 100. It does fail this, and that's because it's working on a probability. It's checking, it's the probability that a mob will fail inside one of these systems squared. So it's fairly low probability, and from the tests I've done with several hundred mobs, it turns out that about 1 in 100 mobs goes to the wrong destination. Looks like we've had a odd one at this point, because we've actually got a creeper in here. I've seen a zombie in here before, but never a creeper. That's an interesting one. Anyway, creepers and zombies tend to be good at going where they want, and skeletons not. However, this is pretty much accurate. Unfortunately, it's not survival friendly. As you can see, you've got to move 4 ocelots, 4 villagers. It's huge, it's very slow. It's a nice try, but it's not the best. So, we move on to the final system. That is my favourite. It's quite different. Okay, on to the final iteration, and what is my favourite of them so far, that is. This is essentially the same as a single unit that we saw previously in the large mob sorter, or at least the function of the sorting system is essentially the same. We have a single regulator, but we've got 2 pressure relief tubes, so the effect is pretty much the same. And so far, perfect sorting on this one. When the skeletons come round in a big way, we might see a little bit of a difference there. But this one doesn't really mind if you get things in the wrong place. We've got some double going through. It's managed to correct itself, even though it's the night, which is purely by coincidence. We would have had a skeleton in the wrong place then, realistically. And there, a creeper goes into the wrong place, a skeleton down the centre. It's more effective during the day, but it doesn't particularly matter, because the novel difference with this, I'm not exactly sure where that skeleton thought he was going, oddly. The difference with this is the redstone down here. Don't worry about the fire pit. Let's you always have to leave spaces to be able to push up against the water stream, or install pistons that you can fire off so that you can declog it, is the problem with these pressure let-offs. And the last mob going through has died. Anyway, what have we got at the bottom here? We have a bunch of zombies with 1 skeleton mixed in, a bunch of skeletons with 1 creeper mixed in, and a bunch of creepers with 1 skeleton mixed in. This is quite a nice mixture. However, we're after a pure form, and this is a still, this. So, we can distill again. Say we're after creepers. We pull this lever, and the creepers get double distilled, as it were. This allows a water flow from just some water storage. You could also use a dispenser here, which would be rather more space efficient, and it pulls out the rear wall of the creeper holding cell and flushes them back into this tube, which goes up and puts them through the system again. This should sort out the skeleton. However, if it doesn't, we can do it again. So this is essentially doing exactly the same thing as we have over here, except it's doing it a number of times that you need, as opposed to a number of times, an arbitrary number of times. And you can do it just for specific ones. So say we don't particularly care about skeletons, and we don't think it's worth it to get this one creeper out to send them all back through. We can dispose of the skeletons. So much for annoying me, skeletons. This isn't restricted, of course, to have only one mob going back through at the same time. Now, getting rid of those skeletons at that point was a good thing, it turns out, because we've got a creeper here. So, we'll flush the creeper back through, because he'll probably come back in the creeper next time. Zombies, are we particularly bothered about zombies? Yeah, let's say we are. We can let those push through as well. I'm not exactly sure how this happens, but occasionally a zombie will fall out. It's not seems to happen. Maybe they fall through here. I quite honestly don't know. It's a strange occurrence, but occasionally a zombie will fall out. I've not seen it happen to any other mobs though. But yeah, this will allow you to distill whatever specific type of mob you want. It is really quite survival friendly, if we're honest with ourselves. There's not a whole lot here. A little bit of redstone, one cat and one villager, and a small construction, quite a few buckets of water, but that's about it. And a fairly small space. Notice we were doing this at night, as I said, so the skeletons won't have been filtered perfectly, but it looks like the second run through, provided we don't get any creepers going in the zombie area or vice versa, we have completely sorted these, apart from the skeletons which we got rid of. Now this is another thing, you see, I've left the zombie flood open, and you can do this on purpose if you want. What that'll do, leaving it open and letting it idle, will get rid of anything that isn't a zombie, because they'll just keep going through and through. You will occasionally lose a zombie, but if you're dealing in large quantities of zombies, you're not particularly bothered. You can do this through either of the other two. I wouldn't suggest doing it too long on skeletons, because if you send them through 10 times or so, you're going to lose most of your skeletons. However, for creepers or zombies, it's quite a good idea, especially if you're planning to make an explosive mine. Hint, 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 wink, wink. Just kidding. Anyway. But yes, so there's two controls for each mob. One is the floodgate at the top, which is a lever because the flood has to go all the way down here. I will suggest doing this with dispensers in 1.3 onwards. This is 1.2.5. And the bottom one is to transfer the held mobs into some other place. At the moment, I just have an incinerator, because that's what I do. I sort mobs to burn them. Anyway. Thank you for watching. I hope this has been informative. If you really want a tutorial, I can make a tutorial for you. However, there shouldn't be anything particularly complicated here for anyone to figure out. I'll just give you a view of the water scheme. I will provide a schematic in the video description for each of these. We have, this one will be the still, this one will be the double sorter, and I'll provide the zombie and creeper separator here, and this is my first version of the sorter for everything, which I'll provide even though it's not particularly good. I'm not going to release the world file. As you saw, there's a few things in here that I've not made public. Not the display, obviously. Everyone can do... well, lots and lots of people have done one of those, but there are a couple of things that I want to keep under wraps just for a moment until I've got them working. Anyway, enough of that. Thank you for watching, have a nice day, and I hope to see you around. Goodbye!